So in today's video, I'm going to be discussing Derek Carr signing an extension with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, before we get into the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and let's jump right into the video. So Derek Carr signed a 3-year extension worth up to $121.5 million extension with the Las Vegas Raiders, keeping him with the Raiders until 2025, and he'll be making on average $40 million per season. That makes him one of 7 quarterbacks making $40 million per year, including some of those quarterbacks are Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Matthew Stafford. Now, if I'm going to give my opinion on this is going to be probably not the best idea because Raiders fans aren't going to want to hear this, but here goes anything. Personally, I don't think Derek Carr is in the class of quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. I personally just don't see him in that. In his career, he has a losing record. He's never won a playoff game. With him never winning a playoff game back in 2016, things may have been a little bit different because the Raiders, they were having a really good season that year before Derek Carr ended up getting injured, breaking his fibula. So if that didn't happen, there is a chance that the Raiders might have won a playoff game back in 2016, and maybe that we wouldn't be talking about, Derek Carr not having any success in the playoffs. But as it stands, he still hasn't won a playoff game. He's only played in one career playoff game, and that was against the Bengals this past season. So Derek Carr, he's not a winning quarterback record-wise, and he hasn't made any noise when it comes to the playoffs. And this is just going to be me pouring on maybe just a little bit more than maybe I should have, but in his career, he's only beaten the Chiefs 3 times in his entire career. The Chiefs are the #1 threat in the AFC West, at least for the past 6 years, and almost ever since Derek Carr came into the NFL. He's only beaten the Chiefs 3 times. So his inability to beat the #1 team in the entire division seems to be one of the biggest issues with Derek Carr, and that's why personally I don't know if you can't beat the #1 team in your division, I don't know if you should be getting paid around the same amount as the #1 quarterback in your division, because if you can't beat them, it's really tough to judge the quarterback, and that just means he's also not having success in that division. But that also seems to be a thing where Derek Carr is getting paid based off of the quarterback market, because the quarterback market is very, very expensive now. And so that could be why the Raiders are paying him all that money, is because the quarterback market is getting very expensive, and it's going to be getting more and more expensive just as years go on. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an actual, $60-65 million quarterback, maybe in 10 or 15 years. The quarterback market is just that expensive, and it just seems like he's getting paid based off of what other people are getting paid, because he's not making the most in the NFL by any means, but he's one of the 7 making $40 million a year, and it just seems like quarterbacks are getting paid based off the market rather than what they've done in the previous seasons and what off the accomplishments that they have done in their career in the NFL. But I'm also not going to sit here and complain, because if a player can make money, they need to do it. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the Raiders and them giving Derek Carr this money. Again, I'll never bash an NFL athlete for taking as much money as they possibly can. That's what Derek Carr did. If you can make $40 million a year, whatever you can make, take it. If a team's going to offer you the money, you take the money. There's absolutely zero reason to get on Derek Carr for making that kind of money. I'm just saying I don't think he's in that level of the Josh Allens and Patrick Mahomes and Matthew Stafford. But I also don't want to diminish what Derek Carr has done in the NFL. He brings stability to a franchise in the Raiders that seems to be a mess 99% of the time. It just seems like there's always something wrong with the late Raiders, with whether them being a really bad football team, whether it has anything to do with their owner, or this past season when it has something to do with Henry Ruggs or John Gruden. It just seems like Derek Carr is that one piece that you can rely on the Raiders team to always be there through any dysfunction, any issues that the team is going through. So that is something that Derek Carr brings, that there's no money that is worth that kind of value that he brings to the team. That right there alone to a team is maybe the most valuable thing you can bring, especially in an organization that seems to be in dysfunction all the time. And so Derek Carr, that aspect alone is a very important role that Derek Carr does play for the Raiders. But he also gets to play with his former college teammate now in Davante Adams, and that's just going to help both of those guys out. They have a history together, so you know that Derek Carr is going to have a guy that he can rely on from their time in college. You know, Davante Adams trusts Derek Carr because they worked together, obviously, in college. So that's just going to be a connection that I think is going to help both of those guys out. Davante Adams, proven elite wide receiver in the NFL, and then you have Derek Carr, who I don't think is one of the elite level guys in the NFL, has done a lot for the Raiders, especially this past season. Because if you look at this past season, I don't think many quarterbacks would have done what Derek Carr did for the Raiders this past year. I don't think there's many teams that would have gotten out of the situation that the Raiders were in. Losing Henry Ruggs and Derek Carr, losing Henry Ruggs and John Gruden was huge losses for the Raiders this past season. A great receiver in Henry Ruggs, and then obviously their head coach. You know, you never want to lose a head coach in the middle of the season, especially if it's not because of the record on the field. It's off the field distractions that John Gruden brought to the team. And it didn't seem to let the Raiders fold and become a bad team. It didn't seem to affect them. It's definitely a loss, and it's going to affect you mentally, but it seems like the Raiders were definitely able to persevere and overcome all those issues that they had. And Derek Carr was able to help the Raiders, lead them to winning the final 4 games of this past season and help them get into the playoffs. So that is something that Derek Carr did. Most quarterbacks, most teams probably would have folded in that situation with all the distractions. It seemed to fuel the Raiders, and it seemed to be a team that rallied around each other, and they were able to get those final 4 victories of the season to make it to the playoffs, which is something that won't go unnoticed. That's a very impressive feat, what the Raiders were able to do this past season. And then if you look at this upcoming season, there's a lot of great things that the Raiders have going for them. They have, obviously, like I said, Derek Carr, who's been a stability for this franchise when it seems to be stability is the least common thing for them. You have an elite wide receiver in Davante Adams that he now gets to throw to, his former college teammate. But then you also have the aspect of Josh McDaniel coming in, becoming the head coach, who shouldn't really be a distraction, shouldn't bring any distractions to the Raiders. And then you have a recipe there in Las Vegas to where they should be a fairly solid team. Again, a reliable quarterback that's been there, stability in the franchise, elite receiver. You've added pieces on that defense, you've extended guys, and then you brought in a new head coach that should hopefully work and mesh well together offensively and make the Raiders a competing team in the AFC. And it should, by any metrics, based off of the mess that they were in last year and making the playoffs, the Raiders should be back in the playoffs this upcoming season.